Thanks so much, Will. That was excellent, and really appreciate this special focus on how the United States is, sort of diverging from the rest of the world. So I wanted to just say a little bit about Talon Metals, and you can just click through the first three slides there and get through the legal baloney, and tell you a little bit about the company, and then I'll go into my perspective from Washington here today. Talon Metals is a publicly traded Toronto Stock Exchange listed mining company that is focused on the idea that there's more high-grade nickel and copper in the United States, particularly in the mid-continental rift area of the middle of the country, in Minnesota and Michigan in particular. So we are, as a company, basically focused on that premise. We've been exploring for high-grade nickel in the Tamarack region of Minnesota. That's about 45 minutes west of Duluth, so kind of central Minnesota. And we've been very lucky that we found lots of high-grade nickel. I've got a little show and tell here. This is a core sample that basically came out of the ground pretty metallic. It's about 12% nickel and 16% copper. And so we've got a really nice resource in Minnesota. It's now in the permitting phase within the state of Minnesota's permitting system. We're making improvements to the plan that we put forward. It's a very small surface impact underground mine that we will be hopefully in production by 2028 and producing and supplying to Tesla. So we have an offtake agreement with Tesla there. We are also building a processing plant in North Dakota in Mercer County. So the processing the nickel from Minnesota will go by train to North Dakota. And that processing facility was lucky enough to get $114 million worth of grant funding from the Department of Energy and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And then in Michigan, and we had some news this morning that some of you may have seen, we've been exploring in a 400,000 acre mineral land package that we purchased in collaboration with Sweetwater, that was originally put together by Henry Ford up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And we'll be exploring there for nickel and copper deposits. And in one of our target areas, we actually were fortunate enough to find some high-grade mineralization. Just recently put out a press release on that this morning. It's just 7 miles away from the existing Eagle Mine, which is the only operating nickel mine in the United States. And they have obviously copper in their deposit as well. Just a word about our partnerships. We have partnerships with the United Steelworkers Unions. They will be organizing our workforce in the United States for our project in North Dakota and in Minnesota, the Tamarack Nickel Project. Rio Tinto is our JV partner. And then we do have strong U.S. government support from the Department of Energy, as I mentioned, and then also the Department of Defense has granted us $20 million worth of funding to continue to explore and accelerate the exploration in Minnesota and in Michigan for more high-grade nickel. That funding has not been utilized yet for the drilling program that we have in the field now, but we hope to be able to do that early next year and tap into that funding and leverage that resource from the U.S. government. Next slide, please. Just a quick word on what we're focused on as a team. Again, a small team focused on both exploration, geophysics, and then on the permitting of the underground mine proposal in Minnesota, and then the North Dakota processing facility. Next slide, please. I want to just talk a little bit about something that you already talked about, Will, which is the idea that actually, if you look at the current gigafactory production for batteries, the announced production of batteries in the United States or in Canada, and then those that are under construction. It's something like, I think your figure was something like 96% of that invested either operational or proposed gigafactory production capability in North America is long nickel-based battery chemistry. So there's lots of talk about different battery chemistries, but right now the manufacturing base for the United States is in nickel-based batteries. And so the US is going to need a supply of nickel from IRA compliant countries. And I think that no matter what happens in the election, you're going to see stronger, stricter rules. There'll be an investigation capacity, in the Department of Energy and in the IRS, looking at sort of mineral laundering or schemes to work around the FEOC rules. So I think over the next year or two, it's going to become more apparent that there will be strong enforcement and that schemes to work around the FEOC rules or other provenance preferences is actually not going to play out that well. You mentioned Indonesia and the Chinese investment there. It's our view that this is not China's effort to be self-reliant for its own supply of nickel for its own needs in stainless steel, but that it actually is intentional to try and gain a global dominance that allows pricing control to push down prices globally and therefore push out Western projects that have to compete on Western, views of economic competitiveness. So it's that predatory pricing control that's the goal in that area. And that's why I think you're going to start to see even more stricter policy provisions that will enforce a preference for materials produced in countries like Canada, the US, and Australia, and a preference for materials that are produced at high standards. And I think that that's one thing that you're going to see more and more focus on is the reputational risk of just sourcing from low-cost Chinese producers that produce at low standards, as well as the sort of regulatory risk around doing long-term contracts for material from those countries or from Chinese suppliers, only to find that there's an enforcement action that comes back behind it. Next slide, please. And then this is just, really a repeat of some of the things that you've talked about already. So I'll wrap up there and just talk at the question Q&A section. Very happy to talk about some news from Washington, D.C. that came out today. That's the 45X production tax credit for critical minerals, which the Treasury Department and Department of Energy put out today. There is an impact for the mining sector. And happy to go into some of that detail, Will. But anyway, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.